What's up, y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita Show. I'm your host, as always, Jack Vita. Today we've got another interview with a future MLB star. We've had a lot of fun pumping these out lately. We recently had DJ Hers on and Gabriel Rincones, and we're talking with a guy who actually spent, I imagine, quite a lot of time with them out at the Arizona Fall League. He was the breakout player of the Arizona Fall League, and he recently got picked up by a new team. Oliver Dunn from the Milwaukee Brewers farm system. That sounds a little weird to me. I'm just thinking of you as a Philly.
It's funny. It's one of those things that hasn't really set in yet. I got a cool opportunity like about a month ago to go to Driveline with some of the Brewers guys, but that's kind of the extent of my Brewer experience. I don't have much Brewer gear yet. It's funny. It's still one of those things that I think hasn't set in for me yet either, but it's awesome. I mean, I'm really excited about it.
Have you noticed any differences between the Brewers organization and other organizations that you've been a part of?
It's definitely been a different experience so far for me, and I don't know how different it is from other organizations because it's my first time on the 40 man. But in my short experiences, I'll say the trip to Driveline, the Brewers were incredibly impressive. Like what they went, like how they set it up for. I mean, they just made it so easy for us to go up there and then have an enjoyable experience and pulled out all the stops to make sure we got access to the best resources and stuff. So I haven't seen, how other 40 man clubs do it, but in terms of overall treatment, it was a step up for sure. It was really cool. It was a good intro to the organization.
Sweet. Well, as I mentioned, you were one of the Phillies prospects at the time playing in the Arizona Fall League. So, fun little story here. You don't even know about this, but in the final week of the Fall League, I contacted Josh Schwam, the PR guy who was setting up all the interviews for the Fall League. And I was out there the whole time. I was out there all 6 weeks, stayed out
Right
there
on.
another 2 weeks after that. So I saw you play a lot. I talked to DJ out there. I talked to Rincones out there. And it was like, okay, shoot, we're already at the end of the Fall League. I need to start fitting all these interviews in. So I said, hey, Josh, can I talk to Oliver Dunn? He said, Oliver's leaving. He's getting married. You're not going to be able to talk to him.
Yeah, that was a busy time. I left, is something, you got to schedule weddings so far ahead that, it's I thought November 11th was a safe date. Like I would miss no baseball for it because it was so far down the road. And yeah, I had to leave. I think I left the 9th, so a few days for. I mean, obviously, it's my wedding. It's not. I wasn't super upset leaving. I knew it was something I had to do, but I did wish I would have been able to stick it out through the playoffs.
Maybe you guys would have won.
I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to at least tried to see if we couldn't have done something fun. I mean, it was the fall league was such a fun experience with that group of guys that it felt a little incomplete, but like I said, it's my wedding. It was the best day of my life probably. So it is what it is.
So you were a member of the Scottsdale Scorpions, and the Scorpions, I believe, were up 9-0 in the first inning in the semifinal game,
Yeah.
and found a way to lose. What I'm saying is, if you had been a team player, maybe you guys would have won that game.
that was that was a crazy game. I was following it as it was going on live, and I saw the first score, and I was like, "Oh, like let's go! They're gonna move on." And then, baseball is baseball. It got offensive from there.
Of course, we're kidding. So congratulations on getting married. You've now been married for a little over 2 months. How's it been? What's it like being married?
It's been awesome. It's a funny story actually. We so that she could come with me this last season. We actually got kind of like courthouse married on Valentine's Day in 2020, like last year, so almost a full year ago. So we've been married for a while. This was kind of more formality for our friends and
Mm,
family to come together and have a day, but it's been awesome. I think, you know, I can't overstate how important her influence in my life has been, and just, you know, having her on the road, being able to get away from the field, like have my best friend with me. It's been awesome. I've enjoyed it. Like the growing up process has been fun, and looking forward to how it keeps going for sure.
so how'd you guys meet?
We just met at school. It was kind of interesting. So she went to Utah and I went to Utah, but we didn't meet. Well, we kind of crossed paths while I was still there, but real briefly. And then over 2020, just through some mutual friends, happened to cross paths again when nothing was going on, and it kind of just took off from there.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again. It's really cool that you guys have been together for so long. You mentioned going to University of Utah. I know you grew up in Utah, Salt Lake
Yeah.
City area guy. What's the baseball scene like growing up in Utah?
Growing up, it's definitely not a hotbed. And when I was younger, it was still kind of in the process of like, it's definitely more of a basketball state and some other things. That's the one pro team we have here in the Jazz. It's definitely heavy that way, but I think it's kind of sneaky growing. There's a handful of guys now that are in the minor leagues, like upper level guys, that it's growing. It's interesting. You got to work around the cold for sure. Um, but so many places do, and I think especially recently, like as I've grown up, the state's gotten like there's a lot more resources to really be able to continue improving your game over the winter, which is, I mean, all you can ask for.
So obviously a big change coming in Pac-12.
Yeah.
Utah leaves the Pac-12, goes over to the Big 12. What were your initial thoughts, and have they changed at all since then?
I think I'm definitely excited for the university. I know it's good financially in terms of, media coverage and stuff. It's a little, I'm a little sad about it still. Like I was a big fan of the Pac-12 conference. I just think it was such a unique conference that, with the Stanfords and the Cals and the super high end UCLAs, like the super high end schools that also happen to always perform really well at baseball, I thought was kind of a cool thing, like culture to kind of the conference. And I think a lot of the road trips are really cool. Oregon State always was such a crazy atmosphere for the Pac-12, and I mean, I loved pretty much everywhere in there. The Arizona schools. So I'm glad the university was one of the schools that didn't get stuck without a conference. Like I'm glad they had to move on, but I probably wish it would have stayed together, but it happened. So it'll be good for the university. I think long term. I think it'll be good exposure wise and recruiting wise. It should help. So I'm excited for them.
I feel like Utah is one of the winners of the conference realignment because if you think about it team by team, some of those teams on the Pac-12, hey, you know what? It might make them more money, but to come all the way to the Midwest all the time to play their non-football
Serious.
sports, that's going to be tough. Utah is regionally close to a lot of those teams.
Yeah.
It's going to be a better conference for especially basketball. Basketball is going to be amazing with Arizona
So
coming in.
fun.
Houston just came in. Oh my gosh, it's going to be awesome. But then I think the other thing that'll be cool is to have Utah and BYU playing in the same conference.
That will be awesome. That game I've definitely always facing BYU on Tuesday games and stuff it was always fun. The fans always got up and went for it, but like we never got to see BYU's ace and they never saw ours. Like I think that'll be awesome on the baseball side and it'll be good football wise again. Those are the most fun football games every year and we haven't been able to play them for a couple years. So it'll be fun to get that rivalry back for sure.
For those who don't know, BYU does not play games on Sundays. That's correct, right? It's
No.
just Sundays.
Correct. Yeah, no, anything but Sundays.
So it's a Sabbath for Mormons.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't play games on Sundays. So, anyway, yeah, so they've had to kind of you guys would always play them on a Tuesday or whatever, but like you're saying, they're lining up their rotation. They're probably playing like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or maybe a Friday, Saturday, Monday. So you guys weren't ever seeing their ace on a
No, and
Tuesday.
and they had some great players. I mean, they had great position players too. BYU's always been, one of those like sneaky good baseball programs that had guys that were really good players, and it's a team that probably doesn't get tons of coverage, being Cold Weather State in that conference, but they were always really good. They've had really good players, and I always wish we could see some of their top arms, but didn't get to happen. But it will now.
Well, you guys will also get to play my Horned Frogs.
That's your school, TCU.
So I went to Valparaiso University, Northwest Indiana, but my sister
Okay,
went to TCU. So I've been to TCU baseball. It is awesome. I saw them play Texas
incredible.
a few years back.
Yeah, they so Braden Taylor actually their first rounder out of there. This last year is from I've known Braden since we were both little. We over
Oh, no
even
way.
just yeah recently Christmas break he was back because he stays at TCU. They do a great job of bringing their pro guys back in and keeping them kind of ingrained in that culture, which I think is awesome. But yeah, he can't speak any higher of TCU. I mean, he absolutely loved his time there. Obviously, he was successful first round. I mean, he's an incredible hitter, but he's an incredible player. Period. But it was cool to, I found myself rooting for them while he was there for sure, and they're really good,
Yeah, he was a phenomenal college player. Excited for him in the next chapter. I got to see him
no
play in
doubt.
Omaha last year. We made the trip.
I talked to him about I was watching, so I didn't get to watch a ton of the games, obviously, because we were playing, but I was able to watch the one where the season ended for them, and he hit that ball to center on the
Oh my gosh.
screws. He hit that ball
We
so
thought it was
well.
gone. Yeah.
Me too. I jumped up. I couldn't believe it didn't get out of there. I mean, I was talking to him. I think he hit it like 110 miles an hour or something. Like I don't know how it didn't go out, but yeah, it's baseball. But it was a fun thing to follow, and it's been cool. Like I was saying, part of the growing Utah community. He's a huge part of it. I think that's I'm obviously going to miss some, but I can't think of any recent first rounders that were born and raised here. So I think he's playing a big part in kind of helping grow Utah baseball, and so I'm obviously rooting for him, just like all the other guys from here.
Is there any hope for an expansion team, a
You
major league
know,
team coming to Salt Lake City?
it's funny. I've been hearing a lot about it recently. Actually, I know that there are rumors that the A's in their kind of transition period will come and play here. And I think that'll be rumors. There's a lot of other locations that they're looking at, but I know Salt Lake's one of them. And I hope it happens because I think, it's Salt Lake's growing like crazy. And I think there's enough of a want for a baseball team here. And I hope the A's come here. I know that they're in the conversation of being an expansion team location. I think if the A's came here and they were able to show well and get fans at games and show that, Utah cares about the game of baseball in that sense, like they're going to get enough fans to make it worth it. I would love to see it happen. I think it would be a cool place to have it. I think, in the mountain time zone, it'd be good to have another team outside of the Rockies. So I hope so. I think it'd be great for the state baseball scene, and it would just be fun to have a team like a hometown team.
You think it would do well? It would draw well?
I think so. I think I'm curious to see in like how it would compare to like it obviously is not going to be a big market like the big cities, but I do think that there would be enough of a desire that it would be good and like I don't know. It'd be so that's why I want the A's to come here and kind of see how it goes. I think so, but you never know. Just like I said, it is a basketball state, so we'll see how. Like I know the bees don't draw great all the time, but they're moving stadiums, which I think will be huge for their attendance. Just different part of the state that baseball is a little more common in that part of the valley. We'll see. I really hope so. I think so. My gut tells me yes, but that's something I think the people that make those decisions know not a lot more about how to tell than I do.
Growing up in, high school, college, did you pay any attention to the bees? Did you follow them?
Probably not as much as I should have. I think, when you're a little kid, it's not the big league, so you don't follow it super close. Obviously, they're incredible players, so I wish I would have. But I definitely went to a handful of games, nothing crazy. I know that I went to one of the like 12 games Mike Trout spent in AAA, which was awesome. I mean, there was so much publicity there, and he ended up being, Mike Trout, which was
Yeah.
cool. But outside of that, I didn't follow it too closely. I kind of followed the college baseball scene a little closer, just because I had seen some of the guys that like went to high schools in the areas I live by go to college and play. So I was more of a fan of that than the bees. But like I said, I was a huge fan of baseball, still am. But at the time, I followed a little bit of it.
So, do you still follow college baseball pretty closely?
I did last year. Because my brother, I have a brother who just got drafted by the Twins this last year, and who went to Arizona State. So when he was in college, well, Florida State and Arizona State, but when he was in college, I followed that kind of closely. Like I would follow the Utes and see what they were doing, and then his team. So it wasn't super deep. Like you'd see the headlines on Instagram or like online or whatever of the guys doing crazy stuff. But for the most part, it was just like ASU and FSU and Utah, kind of what they were doing.
Very cool. So let's talk a little fall league. You
Yeah.
had a fantastic fall league. I think you put yourself on a lot of people's radars. Now, admittedly, I'm not some prospect guru. I'm not Jim Callis. Jim Callis is another friend of mine. Jim does a great job, or
Yeah.
Jonathan Mayo, Sam Dykstra. I'm not those guys. Maybe I will be someday, but I don't follow. I have not followed in the past minor league baseball as closely as now I think I will, especially after spending a year at the fall league. But you came into the fall league. You are not a top 30 prospect according to MLB Pipeline.
Hmm.
You had a phenomenal fall league. Actually, I kind of feel like there were two other guys that it was like three middle infielders that all kind of had similar breakouts at the fall league that were interesting. Um, See if you even know who I'm thinking of. But um, how'd you enjoy it? What'd you think? How was that experience for you?
It was incredible. I tell people when they ask, like, it was some of the most just like fun I'd have playing the game again in a long time. Just something about the kind of atmosphere of a bunch of guys you don't know playing in like important games, like in big league uniforms. I mean, I obviously playing well was part of what made it so fun, but it was just a great league, like meeting so many new guys, playing against such good players all around the board. I mean, they do a great job of making it super competitive, and the travel's awesome playing in the big league stadiums. I mean, I was a huge fan. I was glad I got to go. I almost didn't. I didn't know I was going until like 8 days before it started, like 8 days before I had to be down there. I was hoping towards the end of the year when I was in Reading that I was going to get to go. My agent was saying maybe, they're trying to get you in. We're seeing how it's going to work, and I hadn't heard anything through the end of the year, so I was like, well, I guess not. Kind of hit off season mode as I was driving back. Thought I was done, and I was actually getting fitted for my suit when Preston Mattingly called me. He's like, "Hey, do you still want to go?" I was like, "Absolutely." I jumped at the opportunity, and I was glad I got to do it, and it ended up being, more than I had hoped for.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was an awesome experience. It was just so much fun to have baseball every day. It was very laid back. Um, you mentioned the uniforms though. That was one of my low key favorite underrated things about the fall league is like an all-star game. The way that
It's
all you
really
guys
cool.
wear your team's uniforms. And I honestly don't even think they do it in Major League All-Star game anymore. I know they've changed it quite a bit. Nowadays, they used to have in the old All-Star game, you'd always wear your team's uniform. And
Yeah,
then the home run derby or batting practice, you wear like a National League uniform
yeah,
that's maybe modeled after that team's colors, the home team that's hosting the All Star game, their colors. Um, and they can sell those All Star game jerseys. Although I never see anyone wearing those All Star game jerseys. Like
me
I
either.
would never. But
Yeah,
they've got now they're playing the game with those All Star game jerseys, and again, they probably want to sell those. But aesthetically, I think it looks like a watercolor painting to have all of these awesome different uniforms playing on that same field together.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I loved it. Now in the big leagues, they're big league all stars. They're getting to wear the uniform every day. So for them, I'm sure
Yeah.
it's just cool to be in the game. But in the fall league, I thought it was awesome too, just to like, for the first time in my career, other than outside of spring training, I'm wearing Phillies on my jersey and I get to see my name on the back. And I think it's just a cool touch to kind of, it's like a little motivation, and also it's just cool, like, like Phillies with your name on the back. It gives you kind of some pride, and like I get to play in this big league uniform, and it was I really enjoyed the experience. I know I have my jersey from the fall. We got to take one home, and I have my Phillies jersey from that, and I plan on hanging it up somewhere at some point. Just it's just a cool experience to kind of let you know you're close, but also kind of motivate you to actually get there.
Well, I think it's cool because for those who are listening and don't know, they take each team sends 8 players, I believe,
Hmm.
and then there are five, or sorry, there are 6 fall league teams, and on each fall league team, those fall league teams are made up of 5 major league prospects that they're sending over there, 8 per team, 40 guys per roster. Now some guys leave early, like
Yeah.
Oliver did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, Oliver was there up until like the last few days. I'm just giving him a hard time about it. But no, it's like, and so what I think is cool for the fans is if you're a Phillies fan, it's like, okay, oh, stop what we're doing if we're at this game. Here comes one of the Phillies guys. We got to watch this guy. Is this
Yeah.
Kroon? Is this Rincones? Is this Dunn? Like, who is this? I mean, you would know, but it's like you're getting, you see the uniform, the guy stepping up into the box, you see a guy warming up in the pen, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's one of our guys. Let's see how he does.
No doubt. It was cool to see in that sense. There was a lot of fans that, these are huge baseball fans if they're coming to the Fall League because it's just prospects. Like these people are diehard for the team they cheer for. And it was cool to see. I mean, you see people show up in Cardinals gear that are diehard Cardinals fans that are like wanting to see Victor play or Taco, all these guys, Cardinal studs, and they want to see those guys play. And so it was a cool atmosphere in that, like, you get those diehard Philly fans that know who all the Phillies guys are and are saying hi to you as you walk in to go stretch. And that part of it was awesome because it's just like part of making it feel like, oh wow, these Phillies fans are here cheering on some Phillies guys. Obviously they want us to win, but they know who you are and they're cheering you on. And it's a cool experience just to be noticed in Philly stuff.
Now I mentioned there were three of you guys that I thought were like the breakout stars of the Fall League, all middle infielders, and a little bit similar in some ways in terms of how you guys were just spraying the ball all over the field. Do you know who I'm thinking of, the other two?
I James Triantos would be one of the two I would think.
Yes.
The
Yep.
second one I wouldn't be sure. Another middle infielder. I mean Colson Montgomery maybe, but I don't know that he's necessarily a breakout because he was always such a
No,
big star.
he's
Yeah,
like a top 20.
I mean
There's
he's
another
incredible.
guy, yeah, another guy who I don't think was a top 30 coming in. Now Trianos was not, he is a top 30, but
Yeah.
Caleb Durbin was the other one.
Oh,
He was a,
stud. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I should have known that. Caleb's awesome. He had an incredible fall league. I mean, he's an incredible player. He had a great year too.
he's from my area here actually
Oh, is
in
he?
northern suburb of Chicago. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I missed him because I was with the Yankees before the Phillies, so I missed him. I never got to meet him, but just playing against him and stuff. He's a great dude, and he's an electric baseball player. Like he's stealing bases, hitting doubles and homers. He's him and Triantos. Triantos and I actually we have the same agency, so it was kind of cool to see. They post stuff about him. I didn't know who he was, and then we play against him, and I'm not sure we got him out more than a couple times the entire
He's a
fall league.
stud. Yeah.
Oh
Oh
man,
my
he can
gosh.
he can he can swing the bat, man.
Yeah, and Triatos, like, if we're just going off the prospect ranking stuff, like, he was already a top 10 prospect, I think, in the Cubs system. So it wasn't like, but he wasn't a top 100, and
Yeah.
I think his stock, all three of you guys' stock went up quite a bit. You just cracked the top 30 prospects. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that was cool. I didn't even think about it when it happened, but I remember that a few days later, my cousin sent me the updated prospect list, and I was on it. I was like, that's pretty cool. I'd never been on one, so like obviously it's a prospect list. You want to be in the big leagues where that's not a thing anymore, but it's definitely cool to kind of get some recognition for the work I've put in.
Do you pay any attention to that stuff?
Um, I try not to. I think you could kind of regardless of where I'm ranked, I try to not let it change, how I go about my business, how I play the game. Like I always want to play the game to me, like, I was Mr. Irrelevant to the Rule 5 to the Phillies. And that's kind of like I try to always play that way, like playing like a guy, like my back's against the wall. I want to run every 90 as hard as I can. So I try not to buy too much into it just because I try to align kind of my identity as a player more in that way. But it is awesome. Like also at the same time, I see it and it's awesome to kind of get recognized for good playing. So a little, but I try not to put too much stock into it.
Yeah, and I think the prospect rankings are fun, but I'm just gonna throw this out there. JP France is actually the first minor leaguer that I ever had on this show, or the first active player I've ever had on this show. I had him on a year ago, he was never at any point a top 30 prospect on MLB.com. Look at the year
Stud.
that he just had.
Yeah, stud.
So
Incredible player. Like you said, the prospect rankings, they do the people, like you were saying, the calluses and all those guys, they do a great job.
they
They're
do, yes.
they do. They're great at identifying cream of the crop great players. But it's not like at the same time it is a prospect list. It's like there's still another level that you have to go prove it at. So just because you're at one point, like people are at just different points of their career. So just because you're not there now doesn't mean you can't be. And just because you are doesn't mean you will be forever. So like I said, it's something that's cool and it's fun for fans and it's awesome to get recognized, but it is something that's still, it's not the end goal.
I imagine you took more pride in winning the Breakout Player of the Year award, the Fall League.
Yeah, definitely. It was cool. I found out my manager texted me the day of my wedding, actually, Marty, and it was just awesome because I came
It was
down
like
there
a
and initially,
Saturday, right?
yeah, 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 it was Saturday morning, and so I'm getting dressed and ready for my wedding, and I got that text. I'm like, wow, what a day to like, just an awesome day to get the award. It was like already such a good day, and added on top, and it was cool because I I originally too wasn't even like they were doing a because I was such a late ad, I wasn't supposed to be technically on the full time roster. It was supposed to be like I would play one day and then be on some active roster, like unable to play for the next couple days. And so I was just, that changed pretty quickly. I think like I'll shout out Marty here. He's the man. I love playing for him, and he helped me a lot. Like he saw that I was playing well and kind of was like, I know the rules, but I don't care. I'm just going to play you. And which was, I mean, obviously it was the break that I needed. Like if I wasn't going to play, I wasn't going to win a breakout or even get attention of other teams and stuff. So I was really just grateful to even be there and playing, which I felt like is part of why, it was easy to have fun because it just felt like, oh man, I'm just like excited to be here and show what I can do, and kind of gave me that chip on my shoulder of like, I came here not on the roster. Like I'm going to get on the roster and show people what I can do and play the game the right way. And so it was something it's definitely it's probably the accolade I'm most proud of in my professional career so far. Because I haven't had a ton. There's not of like I haven't won a lot of awards, so it was cool to get recognized that way, and I didn't expect it at all. So that made it even better.
You mentioned something very interesting there. So you say that there are rules in place with the Fall League, and you ended up playing more than you anticipated to play. Can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, so I like you were saying when you were outlining the details of how many guys are on the teams, there I was what was considered a reserve technically. I was down there and on the team, but the way it worked, like I was technically only supposed to be able to play. It was from what I understood, it was supposed to be I was not on any roster, so ineligible to go into the game regardless of injury. The second day would be I was only able to go in if somebody got injured. And then the third day I would start. And then that would kind of cycle off that way. So I was only theoretically going to be able to play every third day. And so I'm not sure how strict the rules are. Like I said, I because that didn't stick for very long. But I know that going down, that was the initial plan on how I was supposed to be playing. And I never really asked Marty why that changed so quick. I let him know I was thankful for it, but I just knew part of it too is it was good. I think gave me a little bit of urgency in the sense of like, if I'm only going to play every third day or everything, like I gotta be dialed in when I get in there. Like I'm only going to get a select amount of chances, and I understood that it's I can't pout about it. Like I was there already. Like I got to maximize the opportunities I was given, and it ended up being more, which was awesome. But it's just, yeah, it was a good way to start it. I think it kind of helped put some fire there. It get me going back after a long season, and I like those kind of. I usually do better when I have a little bit of like something that kind of upsets me enough to like really motivate me, and that was what that was.
So the chip on your shoulder kind of deal.
I yeah, I would say I try to not let it to get too out of hand, play super emotional, because usually I'm better when I'm like kind of
Yeah.
like a calm chip on my shoulder. But it absolutely was a good motivator for me to like make sure I was showing up ready to go every day.
That's really cool. So it sounds like it was kind of like a hey buddy, don't get your hopes up too high. You're going to play every third day. You'll get in there. It's kind of like it sounds like there's like an A, B, C team for lack of a better word, and you were on the A team by like probably like 2 weeks in.
2 weeks in, yeah, it happened pretty quick, and that part was awesome. And it was awesome too that it happened without anybody getting hurt, because that's what I was told
Yeah.
initially, is that like, you know, you'll get more playing time if somebody has to go early. And obviously, you never like, I could, even though I wanted to play more, that's not something I could ever hope to happen. And so I was glad that the rules weren't as strict as they maybe initially seemed, that I was able to get in there with everybody staying healthy.
So really not that long after you got married, you got traded. Did that
Yeah,
come as a surprise?
totally, actually. So I was on my honeymoon at the time. We had just left. It was the first morning, and you know I was aware of what was going on. I knew the Rule 5 was coming up, and I knew I was eligible for it. I knew that I had, kind of put my best foot forward in the sense to make something happen. But I had, I knew the Phillies weren't putting me on the roster the night before, and there was no other news about being traded. So I figured, like, when I went to bed that night, I was like, okay, like the Rule 5 will happen, and however it goes, it goes. And I woke up. Well, so my phone was on my nightstand. It's 5 in the morning because Hawaii is way back from the East Coast time. And it starts going off, and I pick it up, and it's the farm director's, Preston Mattingly. And I like put the phone down. I was like, okay. I let it ring. I'm like, I got to wake up a little bit because this is probably important. So I like got up and then called him back, and he was just telling me that he was like, hey, we really like you. We appreciate the time, in our organization, but we traded you to the Brewers. And it was awesome. I mean, it was great news. Obviously, it was cool. It happened on my honeymoon too, because it was just like I said, it's like another good news while you're on your honeymoon. So it's good anyway.
So you're excited about this. It sounds like this was something where it's like, man, you're probably looking at Philly and like, man, it's gonna be tough to get up with the middle infielders they have. You look at the
No doubt.
Brewers, it's like, hey, I might make the team out of spring training.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you like. I love the Phillies. I always love the Phillies because they like, you never know what would have happened, but in the way I view it, kind of rescued my career. I think with the Yankees and the depth they had, and how I had gotten off to kind of a slow start with them, and just where I was at organizationally, it didn't look great for me career wise. And so, being Mr. Irrelevant of the Rule 5, like them getting me out of there. And then the things that they let me play every day. Like, it's something I had to earn, but like they were saying, like, it's the ball is in your court. Like, if you do your thing, you'll play every day, which is all you can ask for. And so I love the Phillies. I loved my time there, but you're right. I mean, they're loaded. They like that team is so good. I mean, even not even just with Bryson and Trey Turner and Alec Boehm at the positions I play in the outfield loaded, but then even you look at like the bench roles are incredible players. And like Weston Wilson was in AAA most of the year, and he 30-30'd. Like everybody, that Cody Clemens was an incredible, like tore up AAA, played good in the big league. So it's just they're so deep that opportunity wise, like, no, there's not always something you can do. There's some, like, baseball is not a lucky game, but there is some luck to opportunity. And in that situation, it was. I mean, they're an incredible team. They went to the NLCS. Like, they're full, and so it's definitely good for my career. Obviously, the Brewers have incredible players too. It's not like it's way easy over here versus the
No,
Phillies,
no, no, no.
but there is like the ball, I feel like, is in my court. Like, if I go out and play my game and do it well, that there aren't as many roadblocks to getting there as there would be with the Phillies.
No, yeah, certainly. It's more about of a positional thing. Like
Yeah.
if you were a pitcher and you're coming up through the Brewer system, and be like, oh, that's tough.
Yeah, that staff's impressive, man. That is and, I didn't know a lot about it. I knew that their staff was good, but like I said, I hadn't followed super closely outside of a few teams. And then when I got traded, I followed him on Instagram and started seeing some things. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I want to say they led in Ks per nine in the big leagues last year. I mean, they're just the staff's incredible. So you're right. That's a tough proposition as a minor league pitcher with them.
Yeah, part of it is just fit in terms of like, I mean, I've seen it as a spectator, never been in your position, but amazing, incredible prospects who it's like, man, if they don't get traded, they're never going to get that chance because of what is there at that position. And it's just really interesting how teams, organizations, depth really differs from team to team.
Absolutely. And that's like I say, when people ask me, is it there's baseball, like I said, is not a lucky game, but there is some luck to opportunity. Like there's so many good players that, it's just sometimes there's just not room and it's part of it. And I think it's something as a baseball player you've got to accept that, like, when those situations arise, if there's nothing you still just got to play your game regardless of where it is, because like you said, there's only, they carry 13 position players in the big leagues. Like they got hundreds of guys vying for those 13 spots. Like if they have a Trey Turner or a Bryson Stott in the middle infield, it's like, you got that you play for all 30 teams. Like you got to understand, you got to stay focused because you do play for all 30, and even if it's not the Phillies, it can be somebody else, like in my situation.
So you're now with the Brewers, and as great as it would be to start the season in the big leagues, you could get the opportunity to live in Nashville for a little bit. So that could be kind of fun.
Absolutely. It's one of those situations. Obviously, you want to get to the big leagues as soon as possible, but it's Nashville for minor league cities. That's as good as it gets. Again, yeah. I looking at it, I was like, wow, that's a cool spot for AAA. That'll be the first like decent sized city I've played in the minor leagues, because the East Coast, there's a lot of like smaller baseball towns that love the teams, whereas Nashville is just a big city.
Nashville's an amazing city too. I was there for the winter meetings, and oh my gosh, we had such a fun time. There was a Lance Brosdowski, give him a shout out here. Lance is over at the Cubs TV network. He's on air talent, has a great YouTube channel, does a lot of prospect stuff. Lance is a good friend of mine. We were talking, we're like, we want to get out to the winter meetings on the cheap. So Lance had the idea, let's get an Airbnb. If we get a house of like 6 guys, it will only be $140 per person for 4 nights in Nashville. Like,
Yeah.
that sounds great. So we were trying to find people to live in this house with us. We ended up like striking out on that. So Lance put it out on Twitter and said, "Who wants to go to the winter meetings? We got this house." Lance has about 20,000 Instagram followers.
Oh wow.
So we ended up living with 4 guys who are fans of Lance's, who are all like,
That's awesome.
they're all they're all like either in college or just graduated from college, and they're all trying to work in the industry. We got a couple guys on the media side, one who's in coaching, a couple who are trying to get in the front office thing. It was like a season of the real world. It was just like six
That's
strangers
awesome.
picked to live in a house in Nashville, and then one night we ended up going over to Broadway Street together, and it was an amazing time. So can't say enough great things about Nashville.
That's super fun. Sorry, my dog's barking in the back, but
You're good.
that's cool, man. Like I bet it was fun too. Everybody's kind of like trying to do the same thing, like advance in
Yeah.
baseball, and everybody knew this. I love experiences like that. That sounds like a ton of fun.
It was a little bit like the college dorm room. So like I
Yeah.
had just got a Nintendo Switch right before going out there. So we were
Oh,
playing
right on.
Mario Kart and Mario Party, and Lance and I played the show one game, and so we're playing video games, we're watching sports, we're talking about sports. And really we didn't spend that much time at the Airbnb. We were at the hotel for most of the time, just like,
Yeah.
doing winter meeting stuff,
Yep.
networking, talking to people, seeing friends. Um meeting with sources. So, but Nashville, I'm going back in a month for a couple days. I definitely have been craving Hattie B's. I don't know if you've ever been to Nashville before, but
I have not.
great chicken place. Great.
Perfect. I'll uh,
So
I'll have to ask you for some recommendations.
I can hook you up. I got some friends out there I can introduce you to. But it's a great place. So if you aren't on the big league roster at the start of the season, you'll have a nice home in Nashville, hopefully,
Yeah, no
at the
doubt.
start of the season. So that's exciting. All right. Speaking of fall league, who were you most impressed by in terms of pitchers? We'll start with pitchers first. Guys, let's say one guy that you faced,
Okay.
and then another guy that you were just kind of teammates with, or maybe you didn't face him, but you got to watch him quite a bit.
Wow.
You can name more than one. You don't have to just say one.
Yeah, no, there were, I mean, there were so many good pitchers. Not because he didn't stand out in my mind. I can't, there was a lefty with the White Sox, a reliever. And I mean, I'm gonna
I
have a
know who you're
hard time
talking
remember.
about.
He throws absolute gas. I remember like my at bats against him were battles. I mean, he was, what was his name?
I'll
In
pull it
terms
up.
of
Don't worry.
in terms of just like pure raw stuff, that was one of the best I've ever faced. I mean, lefty. He was high nines, hard slider. What was his name? Um,
Oh, it was Glendale. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong team.
yeah,
I'll pull up
Glendale.
their roster.
Yeah, I mean, they were really good pitching wise. I think Ricky Tiedemann was in the league. I know I
Yeah.
hadn't faced him. I didn't face him in the fall league, but I faced him in Reading. Actually, it went pretty viral because you know it was really impressive. He struck out all 11 outs one day he made, and that we faced him that day, and that was about the best I've faced. That I mean, that's a tough AB. Those are those fun ones. Like you really gotta you gotta be ready to go because that stuff is impressive.
Was that the game at Goodyear, the triple header?
No, no, no. So I faced him in season with the Phillies. He threw that.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
he threw that
Gotcha.
day, but that day we played Peoria that day.
Okay, so different game.
Yeah.
Because that triple header was fun for me. It's like, okay,
Oh,
I'm
it was
just gonna
awesome.
camp out. I'm just gonna watch all these guys play in the same spot. I don't have to make the decision of like who am I gonna see tonight. It's like, nope,
Yeah,
they're all there. I'm just gonna go see them. Jake Eater, I think, is who you're talking about.
really good. That
Lefty
was
from the White Sox, number 50,
yeah, really good.
six
Do we,
four.
was he a starter? Eater might have been
Uh
the starter. He was great too. But the guy I'm thinking of, I think, is a reliever. Was there another lefty with the White?
Fraser Ellard.
Yes,
Yes,
that
that's who I'm
that
thinking of. Yeah.
that stuff was good. I mean, there were so many good guys, but just that left on left power matchup, like his power arm from the left side that was a fun one.
Ellard from Roswell, Georgia, 6'4", 205 pounds.
That sounds like him. Yeah, he was good, man. And then guys on our team that we played with, I mean, we had a lot of good arms. I think the guy we mentioned earlier, Takoa, was fun to watch. I mean, man, when he was locating, I mean, he's a high nines guy. I mean, that is just pure power. He was fun to play behind. I think, some of my Philly teammates like Christian McGowan, Dom Pipkin, some of those guys, other guys like Baker had such like that. It was so fun to play behind him there because in the season I think he would admit that like his command didn't quite click and he was kind of like trying to do a bunch of different things, and in the fall league something really clicked for him. He was throwing strikes. I mean, he's a 98 to 101 arm, so he was awesome to play behind. He was throwing slider really well. He's throwing a split that he had just started throwing that was really good. So that was awesome to see. And like I said, I root for the Philly guys. They all threw really well. I think the Phillies had a great showing in that fall league. Like with Gabe, the guy you interviewed earlier, he was incredible there. That was my first experience with him. So it was awesome. There were so many good arms. That's what kind of makes it so fun. It's hard to narrow them down. I know I'm missing a bunch, but
How about bats? Who impressed you the most, hitter wise?
James Triantos was up there. I mean, that dude, we did not get him out. Like he had 3 hits against us every time. He was super impressive. Caleb Durbin, like you said, killed us. Um, Colson Montgomery he killed us when we played him. Obviously, he impresses a lot of people. He's really high on lists. But that homer he hit in the Fall Stars game, It's
Oh
not
man.
it doesn't make it a bigger deal to me necessarily that he did it in the Fall Stars game. I mean, it's awesome to hit it in a national televised game, but that at bat he had, dude, I was at second base, like power lefty. I think it was Cop with the Dodgers, power lefty, hard curveball, like tough AB, battle and two strikes, and hit a high 90s fastball off the plate in to right center. I was like, that's that's pretty special.
He smoked that thing. And you mentioned Triantos. I was so impressed with James and also interviewing him too. I mean, I have not had him on this show. He's welcome on anytime. I'd love to have you, James. But James, I did an interview with for Sports Illustrated, and I was very impressed with his demeanor, his calmness, and his confidence
Absolutely.
too. Like he's a confident kid, but he's not a cocky kid. Like he's
Yeah.
a confident kid who handles himself very well. Seems way more mature than 20 years old.
So I had no clue he was 20. I I I knew he was younger, but so we had a night where part of the fall league, our agents had a house and had everybody over, and we were talking, and I was talking to one of the agents, and he said something like, "Oh yeah, and he can't even legally drink yet." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I mean, he's not even 21. I had no clue he was 20. Just playing against him, you like his composure, things that we had no idea. And so that I think that obviously on top of just playing really well is what made it so much more impressive. Is I'm like I was a sophomore in college at that age, and so he's special. The Cubs have a special player there.
He finished high school a year early, and
Oh,
he's telling me about how when he's a senior or what should have been his junior year of high school, I guess that year he graduated a year early. The Washington Nationals had a COVID outbreak, and they needed to place the guys who were healthy needed a place to train. So guys were training at his house. Kyle Schwarber is hitting at the cages
wow.
at his house, and like he's telling me all this, and he's just so calm and cool and just like yeah. And he's saying like obviously he's saying like this is really cool and I'm taking stuff from them and everything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
But he didn't seem like he seemed like a 28-year-old the way he was talking about it.
yeah.
He wasn't phased by it. So I don't know. I think that kid is going to be a star.
I agree.
And he said, I asked him, I said, is there a guy that you modeled your game after or, took some things from? Who's your favorite player? And he said, Dustin Pedroia. I was like, I could totally see this kid being baseball's Dustin Pedroia for the next 15 years.
That would be awesome. That's that's a good comp too. I mean, Dustin, I think a lot like I'm kind of in the same boat. Undersized guys that play in the middle of the infield. Kind of some I think growing up that was someone a lot of people looked up to. I'm the same way. I think that like the energy he played with is something that I try to make sure I play the game with as well. It's he's probably my favorite player to ever watch just for those reasons. Like that chip he plays, that fire. That's funny you said that. I think
So
that's a good
maybe you're
comp.
the Dustin Pedroia for the next 15 years then.
Hey, I there are things about his game I absolutely want to model. I think he played the game the right way all the time, and that's I think most important part for me.
I think Durbin may have said the same thing too about Pedroia. So like
Telling you
that's
the
what I'm saying. You guys are
undersized
all kind
guys
of
at
like
second
yeah.
base. Yeah, that's the guy. Like if you're undersized guy that play middle of the infield, that's the guy I think everybody was a huge fan of.
So you've played a little bit of. I saw in your baseball reference. Now, admittedly, I wasn't watching, but it says on there that you're a second baseman, third baseman, and left fielder. So you
Mhm.
saw some run at some other positions. How'd you like those other positions? Do you have a preference of where you would like to primarily play?
Definitely no preference. I think I I'm most comfortable at second base just purely because of game reps through college and pro ball, but definitely not a preference. I think, I kind of pride myself on being able to pick those things up quick and at least, I just want to be in the lineup and do what I can do to help win. So wherever that ends up being, I'm like totally cool with. I do enjoy third. I think I played it a lot in high school. And I think something that kind of gets missed is I have some arm strength I never get to show off at second base. And so that part of third base kind of intrigues me in that like, okay, that might, make that tool something I can use there. And then I run well. So like the outfield is like if they need me to go out there too, I'd like to think that with some reps that I can get routes good enough to be a professional outfielder with my ability to run. And I'm one of the few guys I think actually doesn't care. I think some guys have like more guys than say have preferences, but I don't really. I just want to. I like hitting. I like to hit, and I'll play defense as hard as I can everywhere. But I just want to be in the lineup and try to win games. So I'll play wherever.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, I do think you're right. There are a lot of guys who say that, oh, I don't care. And they care.
They care. Yeah, they care. A lot of guys care. I mean, and for good reason. Like guys that I think are view themselves as like no, I want to play this position because I'm a great defender there. I'm like, that's right on, dude. Like if that makes you good at your position, do your thing. I kind of feel that way, just defense total. Like I want to say that I can be good at defense wherever you put me, and that way too, it's easier to get on the field. Like I think outside of catcher, shortstop, center field, it's like if you can be elite at one of those three, I think pursue that because that's where you can make massive differences defensively. And obviously there's other guys at every position that have done it. But I think outside of that, there can be like there's real value in being able to be good at other positions and kind of flip around and provide value in that way to let the manager play some matchups and do things that way that will help a lot of guys progress their careers.
Have you ever been to Milwaukee before?
I haven't. No. No, I'm excited. A lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people that I didn't know had ever been there have reached out and said, I mean, I've heard only good things about it. A lot of people love that city. So I'm definitely excited for when that opportunity comes to check it out. But I've never pretty much that whole year. I've never really been to Illinois, was like any parts of Wisconsin. I haven't it's a part of the country I haven't gotten the opportunity to see yet.
It's one of the most underrated cities in America. I
I'm
lived in
hearing that a lot.
I lived in Kenosha for a little bit when I was in college. Before transferring to Valparaiso University, I was at Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Not too far from Milwaukee, in between
Okay.
Milwaukee and Chicago. And I know I'll get some hate mail for this. I'm a Milwaukee over Chicago guy, personally.
Wow.
Milwaukee is a great city. It's easier, and part of its personality. Like I just don't
Yep.
like to deal with Chicago traffic and parking and the prices
Such a
and
major
the
city. Yeah.
crime. And then you've got Milwaukee where it's like, hey, it's a little smaller. Stuff is significantly cheaper. People I think are friendlier and the food's better. Like, I mean, they're both great food towns. Chicago is a great food town,
Yeah.
but Milwaukee's a little cheaper. And Milwaukee's got great brats, cheese curds,
Yeah.
cheese in general, burgers, all that kind of stuff. Beer. I don't drink beer, but people love beer. That's a good place for beer. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Milwaukee. It's easier to get around. You can park. I think you'll love it.
I can't wait to see it. It's similar to what you're saying. A lot of people have been like, "Hey, man, it doesn't get the credit it deserves. It's an awesome city. And you know that what you just described kind of feels like my scene. I'm not a big like, I like cities that are not quite as fast paced and have heavy preferences on food. So I'm excited to get to experience that when I can, and then I'm excited I've always thought that stadium is so cool. Just with like the roof that moves in weird ways and like that I've like watching home runs to center field, like hit the wall and bounce back, I always thought was super cool. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about the city for sure and the organization.
And don't forget the sausage race.
That's right. I know it's funny. My my wife sends me like whenever she sees a TikTok because now the she'll like she wants to look up Milwaukee and she looks it up on TikTok and she sent me a few of the sausage race highlights and stuff which are hilarious.
And of course, I mean, you old enough to remember the Randall Simon sausage race moment?
No, I don't think
Randall
so.
Simon was a first baseman on the Pirates, and he swung a bat at one of the sausages while they were running. Yeah.
Oh, bold. That's a bold idea. That's
So,
funny.
yeah, it was classic. It
I'll have
was
to look that
lighthearted.
up
It
on
was funny.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good someone. Maybe I'll put that on my TikTok. That'll be grow my TikTok because people will see it and be like, "Oh my gosh, never saw this before."
Yeah. Good interaction post.
Okay, so some of your interests off the field. You're a big UFC guy.
Huge. Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
I just watching it with my dad growing up. My dad loves boxing and UFC, and I think UFC does an awesome job of making the events really fun. So I was always a big fan. I watched a lot through college and stuff, but I went to a fight in Madison Square Garden in was it 2021? Yeah, 2021 winter at Madison Square Garden, and it was insane. Like in terms of in-person sporting event atmospheres, it's as crazy as I've ever been to. Like, I mean, Madison Square Garden is also Madison Square Garden. Like that played up in it too, but it was insane all night, 4 straight hours. It was like the craziest event I'd ever been to, and I remember the fight of the year was that night between Gaethje and Chandler. So just happened to see some crazy fights too, but that was what really hooked me. And since then, it's been. I mean, that's what I watched the most of by far. Like YouTube breakdowns, fight replays. It's just something I really enjoy watching.
I've always said like I'm gonna get into it, and I really need to. It's so hard with having so many sports to try to track and follow, and working in this field, as you know how it is. Like sometimes you want to
No doubt.
unplug a little bit from sports, but like it's something that whenever I'm at a bar and it's on, I love it. It's great. I really need to get more into following Ultimate Fighting.
I think it's super fun to follow too. Because I mean, then you see like guys' careers and like when you get really into it and understand like, oh, this matchup would be fun if he fought this guy, and you kind of see those all come together. Like you said, when your job is covering sports, I'm sure adding another one is tough. But in my scenario, where it's just I worry about baseball, and then I'm a big sports fan. I love football too, but when there's UFC on, it's like that's my thing. That's kind of like a good escape for me. I know I love in season the Saturday night fights that like I love with my teammates, post game. We'll miss some of the early card stuff because of our game, but that post, like inviting everybody over to a hotel room and streaming it onto one of the TVs and all kind of getting into it's one of my I love that camaraderie it kind of creates, and just like the environment of watching the fights is just a little different. Like it's just high energy and like everyone, like crazy reactions, which is fun.
That's sweet. So you're a football fan. Who's winning on Sunday? I should say, by the way, this episode's going to come out after, like, this will probably come out right before the Super Bowl.
Okay.
But by the time that this episode's out, your picks will be history. So
Okay.
choose wisely.
So I'm
And it's conference championship weekend, by the way, at the time that we're going into that. That's where we're at
Yep.
when we're recording this to the listeners who don't know.
Yes. So for any Milwaukee fans that listen to this, I am a huge 49ers fan. I did love the Packers, but that was a game they had. That game made me so nervous that the Packers were they're coming together, man. Jordan Love's incredible. I was glad we got through it. Fun game to watch. Um, I think it's so hard to choose anybody but Mahomes. I think just the way they've done it recently in the playoffs. But I think I would love to see 49ers Ravens. That's who I think on paper should do it. I think talent wise, they're pretty clearly the best two teams in the NFL. And I would love to see the matchup again because the Ravens absolutely blasted the 49ers last time they played. So I'm hoping for a little chance at redemption there because that was a tough game. But if I had to pick, it's those two. But I think they're both going to be really good games. I think the Lions are incredible and they're playing good at the right time. I think the Chiefs just know how to win in the playoffs. So I'm excited. It's going to be a fun weekend of football, but I'm fingers crossed for the 49ers for sure.
Do you really think that the Chiefs would get this far and the NFL would not allow Taylor Swift to be at the Super Bowl?
It's funny, man. We watch like everything good that happens for the Chiefs, like straight to Taylor Swift in the booth. Like it's funny. I mean, I'm sure it's bringing a different viewing group to the NFL, which is probably cool. But I'm sure she'll be there, and I'm sure that I think it would be hilarious if she was performing the halftime show and they were there. Like I think that would be a funny thing. I know it's not happening, but I thought right when they started dating, I'm like, wow, how crazy would that be if like she performs it and he's playing in it? But I'm sure she'll be there, and I'm sure it'll be getting covered.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think the NFL's passing up on the opportunity of getting the Chiefs in the Super Bowl right now. So there may be some calls this weekend that are not too unsimilar or not too different, I should say, from last year's AFC Championship calls
Yeah.
when the Chiefs were playing the Bengals. That's
Yeah,
all I'm going to say.
yeah, no, there's some, there's some interesting ones with Patrick Mahomes at times, but it's how it goes. That's
Well, I'll be happy though because I'm a Steelers fan, so I just want to see Baltimore lose. That's really all I care about at this point.
yeah, I get that. Steelers, they're good, man. I think they're. I didn't watch them a ton this year, but I
You
think
might have a different opinion then if you did.
yeah, I'm sure you're a lot more into it. But I thought they played. Their defense was good. I don't.
Defense is great.
Yeah, defense is really good. I thought offensively, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know enough about football to really get into the X's and O's of why it doesn't. You read the columns and people theorize why it doesn't work, but they definitely have some work to do that way. But I think they could be really good. I know T.J. Watt's insane, so they're a fun
Yeah.
team to watch that way.
Defense is great. I feel like we're going to be 15 years from now. We'll be talking about you'll be an MLB veteran. We'll be talking
I
about
hope so.
the end of your career. But we'll also be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they finished 10-7 every single year, and Mike Tomlin's still their coach.
It is that interesting level of like good enough to continue doing what you're doing, but also like haven't taken that step in a while. It's interesting. I know when I was young, so like I said, when I lived in Pennsylvania, I actually was a huge Steelers fan back when they had Jerome Bettis and Troy Polamalu, Hines Ward, all
Yeah,
those
that
guys. Like
team was
I
awesome.
loved those teams. I haven't followed them much since I left, but Jerome Bettis when I was a kid was my favorite player ever to watch. Just downhill, hard nosed running back. He's kind of agile to be a big dude. I loved those teams.
Yeah, I loved when we would play the Ravens in that era of football. Like that era of football, those two teams would just kill each other.
Insane.
And the Ravens, it's like for me, I have so much fun rooting against them. Like it's not like, and I detest them. I hate them, but it's not like
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I hate any of them as people kind of thing
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where maybe you get that, maybe some people get that with some teams or some players. I mean, that's a whole
Yeah.
other thing, but it's just like, man, nothing would make me happier than to see the Ravens fail. Like that kind of
Yeah.
feeling. And I don't feel that towards any other team in sports. Like it's just that rivalry. That's how it is. And it's fun. So like whenever those two teams play each other, it's fun. It's like Michigan, Ohio State.
For sure.
It's awesome.
That's what makes I think that's what makes sports so fun is like fans love their team but hate that one almost as much as they love their own team. And it just creates crazy like those playoff games are crazy. I think that's what it's like being a diehard fan's all about. You got to have the team you love and then the one team that you just cannot stand.
Yeah, exactly. Like the one team, exactly it. Now, I'm curious, baseball wise, who were you a fan of growing up? And has your fandom diminished a little bit now that you're a professional baseball player?
Definitely is diminished a little in the sense that, you know, like you want to be there, so it's hard to kind of like be a huge fan of like following different teams. I I was always like I was never a huge fan of teams though because I moved to Utah so young where we don't have any team to really pull for. Like I would have pulled for the hometown team. Like I'm a Jazz fan in the NBA, but I was always a huge fan of players. Like I was saying early, I loved those Phillies teams with the Utley and the Rawlings, the Ryan Howards. Like I loved watching those teams. I pulled for them really hard. I think I lived in Denver for a little bit too in the Matt Holliday, Tulowitzki era. So I loved that team at the time, was huge fans of those guys. I think, traditionally I was more of a fan of players just because without that one true team to really root for, I kind of like attached myself to players. Like I said, the biggest one for me was Pedroia. Like I never was a huge Red Sox fan necessarily, but I always wanted them to win because he was playing. And it kind of bounced all over, mainly based off of players. Like, even shout out the Brewers a little bit. I saw he actually got inducted into their Walk of Fame today. I loved watching Ryan Braun. I like, for whatever that era, I loved watching him and those teams play really well. So I was definitely more of a fan of players versus teams growing up, but I had some teams I attached to. I liked the Rockies a lot when I played there or when I lived there.
Yeah, for me, the fandom thing is totally gone. Like, I just don't have allegiance to any team anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I was a diehard Cubs fan.
Yeah.
Diehard. They won the World Series my senior year of college before I came into this field. I cried my eyes out, and
Oh,
I felt like I
that was
graduated
awesome.
from fandom. It was like I nothing was ever going to top that. Like, I got to experience that, and now it's like I'm at spring training camps. I'm interviewing these managers or
Yeah.
players, and it's just like it would feel weird to me to be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a fan of this person," or like
Yeah.
it's not like that for me anymore. So for me, it's just like I root for the guys, the individuals. I root for the people
Totally.
that I know, the guys I'm close with, the guys I'm friends with, or even honestly, like if I meet a guy like a manager and I just talk to him for 10 minutes or whatever it is, and I'm like, man, that like last year it was Terry Francona. I met him one time, spring
Great dude.
training, and I found my every time I was watching Cleveland play, it's like actually I kind of want Cleveland to win this game. I want
Yeah.
Francona to win. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, very similar situation. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of any team necessarily, but you have your buddies you play with. Like, I wouldn't consider myself a Yankee fan, but being like my draft class and those guys, like they have a lot of success. Like some of my good buddies play for the Yankees. So, while I might not be a Yankee fan, like I really pull for their success. And that would mean, pulling for the Yankees to win. Like Terry's a great guy. Kind of funny. My college coach and Terry are best friends. So I
Oh
met
no
him for
way.
the first time, yeah, like a month ago, right after I'd gotten traded to the Brewers. And he was a great dude. That was a cool, like, always watch him managing World Series and stuff, and then get to meet him and realize, yeah, he's just a guy. Like he was a cool guy. He was awesome to meet, cool stories, and that was a cool experience. But like, yeah, like you said, once you get to kind of know guys, it's hard to really like you pull for the guys you like regardless of where they are, and that kind of makes being like a diehard fan harder, I think.
Yeah, but it's just like you're not starstruck by anybody. Like that whole
Exactly.
thing wears off. And I honestly
Exactly.
think that I wish that everybody had more encounters with people that they might quote unquote be starstruck by.
For
Because
sure.
then I don't think people would really be all that impressed with celebrities anymore if they got to encounter them more often. They'd be, oh, they're just normal people.
I agree totally. It did. I mean, like regardless of the platform, like platforms make people seem like a bigger deal than they are. Not to say like, people like are big deals, I guess, guys that are playing, but
Yeah.
they're literally normal people. Like that's the thing is like they make the same mistakes everybody else does. They get enjoyment out of most of the same things everybody else does. Like they're just your normal dudes. If you meet them away from whatever they do really well, regardless of what it is, actors, athletes, like TV personalities, away from what they do, they're just normal people. And I agree. I think if people were to meet more of them, it would kind of you'd realize like it's just somebody who happens to be really good at something that gets public attention. Like and I think then too it would be a little easier for people to understand like when athletes or people kind of misstep and do some stuff. It's like, dude, they're just people, man. Like they make the same mistakes everybody else does. It's just when they do it, everybody hears about it.
So going off that, has there been one player that maybe early on, first spring training or something like that, that you met or you encountered and you were just like, oh my gosh, that's that guy?
I think the first experience I had with that was the year I got drafted. Aaron Judge was rehabbing, and like he walked in just this like larger than life. I mean, part of it too is that he's massive, so it kind of just like the energy about it is just a little different because he is huge. But that one was probably the first where I was like, whoa, like we're in the same locker room. That's the MVP. That's kind of crazy. And then he comes up and says hi, and you're like, oh, normal dude. Like great guy. Aaron's an awesome. I don't know him personally, but just like the way he interacted with
Yeah.
minor league guys and stuff when he was young, he was a great dude. Like totally stand up guy. So that was, I mean, I think that was probably my first experience with the like total superstar, but just like a normal guy, nice guy that is really good at hitting a baseball and playing right field.
No kidding. Yeah, the one guy for me that I felt somewhat starstruck by was Ichiro.
Yeah.
I met Ichiro last year at Mariners camp, and I think this is my theory is like I wouldn't be because I met Mike Trout. I wasn't phased by Mike Trout, but I was a little. I wasn't. I shouldn't say I was phased by Ichiro, but I was just like, he's working. He's hitting at cages right now. I gotta go watch him. And I
Yeah,
shook his hand, and I'm like, this is so cool. My theory is, if there was someone that you were a fan of as a kid that you cross paths with as an adult, there's still a little bit of that inside.
for sure.
Different from someone that you might be a fan of now as an adult, and you meet that person. Oh, yeah, they're just a normal guy. They're around my age,
Yep,
or maybe even if they're a little older. That's my theory.
totally. I agree. I think part of that for me, like different eras. I think, yeah, I've heard that he's really good friends with the manager of the Brewers because he was his college coach, and I've heard he comes around a little bit. So I'm hoping he does.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a situation for me where it's like, I had posters of that guy on my wall and read his book and stuff. I think that's one where I would kind of feel the same way, where it's like, whoa, like that's, I've watched every highlight video of his on YouTube, like and now he's right there.
Yeah,
I hope I get that chance to talk to him. That would be cool. And I think I agree. I think when it's someone you're a huge fan of as like a kid, a little
Dustin
bit,
Pedroia.
yeah, a little bit of that's going to be there. And for me, I think that's probably who it would be for me.
Ichiro or Pedroia?
Pedroia, Ichiro
Yeah,
too. He's
Pedroia.
he's incredible,
Yeah,
but just Pedroia was one of those guys I just
yeah,
tried to relate to.
yeah. Ichiro for me was Ichiro, Pujols, and Derek Lee. Those were like my guys growing up.
Yeah,
So,
studs,
all right, a
man.
couple more things. I know we're gonna run here shortly, but uh, Oliver Dunn. I have to think you're an Irishman.
Yeah, technically, I not anything recent, but that's definitely where the 21 and me or whatever. Like that's where it says a lot of the heritage comes from. And you can probably tell. I don't know if people that watch this can, but I'm redheaded too, so it kind of makes it even more of like, oh, you've got to be Irish. It's true, yeah, but not super heavy. Like it's been a long time since I had family from there.
Are you a fan of The Departed?
Love it. The movie,
Yes.
yeah, it's incredible. I love those movies. What's the what's the other one with they ended up robbing Fenway Park at the end of the movie?
Oh, The Town.
The Town. I love that one too.
Oh my
That
gosh.
that's one of my favorites.
Whose car we gonna take?
Yeah. The scene where Ben Affleck's like, "I need you. We might hurt somebody." Da 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 da, and he's like, "I'm in."
Whose
That
car
scene's
we gonna
crazy.
take?
Yeah, yeah. Crazy.
What are some of favorites? So movies on TV.
Mhm.
You're just scrolling through cable. It's a favorite of yours. Okay, I gotta put this on. I'm gonna jump in for a little bit. Or a movie that you've just seen so many times you never get sick of.
I
I
think
imagine those two movies we just named are probably in that category for you.
huge. Especially I never skip over the town when I'm scrolling. If the town's on, I'm turning it on. I think that I now that I'm thinking about this, I'm a bigger Ben Affleck fan than I realized. I love the movie The Accountant. That's one I won't skip either. If it's on, I'm watching that one. I love the James Bond movies, but specifically the Skyfall one. That's one of my favorite movies
Yeah,
ever.
that's a
I'll
good
watch
one.
that. I'll
Yeah.
watch that every time. Um, obviously, I have kind of a movie type of the ones I don't skip over. I love the kind of like action, bank robbing, spy movies, but I try to think of one not in that genre that I love. The rom com, like a Hitch. I love that movie. Like that
Oh
one's
yeah,
on
that one
TV
was
a
on
lot.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's on TV a lot. So I find myself clicking on that one a lot.
It's kind of weird because I feel like I don't know how these things work because you can like Google where do I watch this movie if you want. If there's a movie you want to watch, and sometimes they'll be like it's on TNT, and so I think that these networks they'll buy the rights for an exclusive amount of time, and then the movie could go to Netflix or some other streaming platform.
Mm,
And within that amount of time, they're just going to keep running it over and over and over again. So I
yeah.
think that's why. And recently, Hitch has been in that cycle, and I'm not
Hmm.
complaining. I've jumped in at
No.
least twice.
Oh yeah, me too. That's one where I feel like the town was in that cycle at one point. I actually think the first time I ever watched the town might have just been accidentally on TV and then loved it and then watched it a bunch of times since. So I think you're right because once you see one that's on TV, I feel like you see it every couple of weeks. They're rerunning it on there.
Yeah, and it's been a while since I've seen The Town running a lot on TV, but it
Yeah,
had a
me too.
run.
It
The
had one
other
for a while.
one that I remember just watching every single time, and this was probably like 10 years ago, was The Other Guys. That one
Oh,
was
all absolute all-time movie.
it's so good. It's like one of those movies where each time you watch it, you pick up on something that's really subtle and really funny that you didn't
Totally.
like notice the last time. Like when he's sliding across the table and he just keeps shooting guys and he just keeps sliding.
So funny. I remember the first time I watched that. I was watching it with my cousins in that scene. They're like, "You think of what I'm thinking, partner? Aim for the bushes." And they jump, and you see him falling, and you're like, "Okay, when are the bushes coming?" And then splat. It's like, what? Like that's how the movie starts? Is your two biggest stars just gone right off the bat? Yeah, all
Oh,
time.
I love that movie. Oliver, we got to wrap things up. So, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or mention that we didn't get a chance to talk about to this point?
No, I mean I think we hit it all. I like we were talking before. It flew by. I really enjoyed it. I am very appreciative of the opportunity to kind of get on and just talk about some stuff and enjoy it and kind of create a relationship. So I appreciate you having me on.
Sure thing, Oliver. You're welcome back anytime. Hopefully, a year from now, we'll be talking about that first year in the big leagues. All right, before we go, I want to give you a chance to plug or promote anything you got. You want people to follow you on Instagram? I know you're not on Twitter anymore, so
Not on Twitter. That would be awesome. Yeah, I got an Instagram. It's Oliver_Dunn with three N's and a three. Follow me. I'm not super active. I'm trying to get better. Like I said, I'm trying to get better at the social media thing, kind of getting out there, show my personality. It's tough. It's like a little out of my comfort zone, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to get more relatable and stuff. So they shoot me a follow. I'm hoping to start posting more. We'll
have the
see.
wife manage the account. I feel like she could
That's
probably come up with some good ideas.
that's a good idea. Yeah, and she just won't be. I get nervous sometimes, but like I don't know why, but I'm like I get like hesitant about posting stuff. So I don't think she'll get that way. Maybe I just hand it over to her. Like just run this for me, please.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much for your time today, man. I'm sure that our audience will be pulling for you this year, and you're welcome back anytime, man.
Right on. Thank you. Looking forward to the next time.
All right, y'all, that concludes our conversation today with Oliver Dunn. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We'll be back again soon with more content, more interviews. We will be, I'll announce who we've got coming up next in the pipeline when we get closer to it because, as we mentioned, this episode's probably being taped about 2 weeks before it's being released. So, not entirely sure what the next episode will be, but make sure you guys subscribe to this show if you guys like it. Leave a comment. Let me know that you're listening. Let me know what you think of our conversation. Will you be pulling for Oliver this season? Um, did you get a chance to go out to the Fall League? Have you been to the Fall League? Would you like to go to the Fall League? Leave a comment on YouTube. Subscribe to this show on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever it is that you are getting your podcasts. All right, so imagine that by the time you're listening to this, it's February now, which means that I'm out at spring training and we will have MLB preview episodes being released soon. I intend to have a preview of each division with a different guest joining me for each episode to preview each division and take a look at each team's outlook on the season. That's what I intend to do. And also, for our reality TV fans, you guys can, if you're watching the Traders on Peacock, if you aren't, I highly recommend it. You should 100% be watching the Traders. If you are, we've got a weekly podcast in this feed. Stephanie LaGrossa Kendrick from season one. She's also a three-time Survivor contestant. She will be joining me every single week over the next 2 months as we recap the Traders. So be on the lookout for that. And until our next episode, I'm Jack Vita, bringing the dancing lobsters.